Monsieur le ministre de la Recherche, Monsieur le Provost of Trinity College, Madame l'ambassadrice de France,
elle est là,
Monsieur le Président d'Atomium Culture et Monsieur le Président de l'Advisory Board d'Atomium Culture, le grand président Felipe González. It's not the first time that I speak here. I came 13 years ago to celebrate the bicentennial of the death of Edmund Burke. To be honest, I knew absolutely nothing about him. But the Irish ambassador in France, was a very clever man, came and insisted and told me Edmund Burke wrote a famous book on the French Revolution. He is considered of having a special link with France. You should come. I thought about it, and as every politician, I accepted. And a painting of Edmund Burke at the end of this hall. So I read not all of his books, but many of his books. And I became an expert on Burke. So if you need again to have a lecture on Edmund Burke, you can invite me. It's interesting because he was a man of the left in the politics of this time, but very critical, as you know, of the French Revolution. And he had a view that was very pertinent, that one of the main weaknesses of the French people is to try to create a situation of the empty table. When we make a revolution, a change, that we destroy everything. And then we start on a new basis. And he said that the British culture and the Irish culture was different. It was a culture for improvement. So, since that time, I tried to improve myself. Well, about the topic of today, which is easier than Edmund Burke works. The current economic and, to some extent, political crisis that afflicts the world and Europe in particular, and which is not contrary of what we hoped, entirely over, has imposed our society to reconsider some of the fundamental notions of how it is structured and governed, and what we want or imagine for our future. Never have the debate about European Union be more alive and present in the media, also, unfortunately, in a positive light. As I outlined during the public launch of Atomium Culture in November 2009 with you, we are currently in a moment of transition for the European Union. A moment dictated not by the current political and economic crisis, but by the ratification of the Treaty of Lisbon, which is now the new chart, signed in 2009, that sets out a tentative of modernization of the European institutions. In spite of all the criticisms that the European Union has been receiving in the past month, we should see this moment as an opportunity to engage the public in a real discourse on Europe and to critically assess how the European Union works and what its citizens want it to look like in the future. You remember that Jean Monnet, and we need some Jean Monnet in our times, and some others also. Jean Monnet said, people only accept change where they are faced by necessity, and they only recognize necessity when a crisis is upon them. Europe today has the possibility to grow from this moment of difficulty and perhaps come out stronger from this crisis. The past years have proved and demonstrated the importance of a strong Europe. It is not unanimously recognized by the people of our continent because they don't travel much, they don't look out of the windows, and they don't know the external world. An importance that will become ever more evident in a world with few huge nations and bloc of nations, very active, intensely active, setting their influence. For me to travel in France or in Ireland at weekend, it's something very depressing. Our countries are asleep, lazy, not creative, not very much creative. And then you take a plane and you go to Shanghai or to Chengdu. Everything is open, Saturday and Sunday, until 10 o'clock in the evening. Everyone is working. They're moving from a place to another place. So you have the perception that the blood of life is not so active now in our body. So what do we want the future Europe to be? Going beyond the discourse of structure and governance, there is a question that lays at the heart of this question. It is one. I'm very glad and thank the organization and Lady White-Green, wheat-green or white-green?
Swedish Videgren, so.
Because you see that I speak fluent English, but I don't speak current Swedish. I'm glad to be here because in this audience, you have leaders and key representatives from universities, media, industry, and policymakers to discuss and learn from each other. And this approach, going beyond disciplines, sectors, or borders, are at the heart of the philosophy of Atomium culture that should be the building blocks of a European society. The strongest, most brilliant moments for the European intellect, like in the Italian Renaissance or in the French and British Enlightenment have always been characterized by transdisciplinary movement of knowledge across borders, across sectors, and across disciplines. Research and curiosity, those not know borders. This is why I believe that this concept of responsible research and innovation will be of key importance of building a competitive and dynamic research and innovation environment in Europe. In 2009, the European Research Area Board, made up of some of Europe's leading representatives from academia and industry, some of whom we have the pleasure to have with us today, called for a new renaissance in Europe. A critical assessment of the use of Europe's intellectual capital underlined the need for Europe to develop a more competitive and efficient research area. What is typical of the process of the European Union is that this work was made in 2009, and since, nothing. The European research environment is today guided by 28 different research policies. Researchers are working in over 20 different languages. It is not strange that Europe's research market is fragmented and separated, creating inefficiencies, missed opportunities, and doubling of efforts. So, one key question is how can we innovate our research system in order to create an inclusive, transparent, and competitive research environment in Europe? And the point I have to mention, because it's the subject of speaking today, what role can the media play? The media environment has been led to a crisis of identity with the development of the internet and the changing paradigm for the whole industry. And it is a very important change for our topic today. The editorial processes have moved from pre-publication to post-publication. Anyone has access now to the same dissemination tools, and the business model of traditional media companies all over the world, and mostly in the Anglo-Saxon world, is overhauled. What will happen in the media system in the coming 10 years? It is difficult to predict, but it certainly will look very different. How can one ensure quality of content or reliability of information in this landscape? And this question is particularly important for the relationship between science and society. Media today does not only relate to what we would traditionally call media or content providers. Media relates also to those new and social media that have such an important influence in the past year, particularly for the young generations. These new tools have changed the way in which one accesses information, how contacts are maintained or broken, and how networks are formed and maintained. We have seen how two-day networks pool resources and disseminate information, and how they influence now movement or revolts. If we bring together this concept with the transdisciplinary sharing of information mentioned earlier, we could see something interesting developing. The power of sharing knowledge will be very significant in the future. As economist Paul Romer pointed out, knowledge is a very different economic asset. Knowledge is infinite. Giving it away or selling it does not diminish the supply of knowledge. Thus, it can be used an infinite amount of times, increasing the wealth of society, making the value of knowledge different. It is clear that the more knowledge is used, the more it enriches society. So knowledge sharing would be a fundamental key to the future European research area, whether through open access or through engagement of different stakeholders in the research process. I will now go to my conclusion, because I know that my time is limited and I see the audience going into a sort of relaxed attention, which is not unpleasant after lunchtime. Well, Atomium culture has been looking at this subject since its foundation. During the public launch at the European Parliament, to which we proceeded 3 years ago, the idea was launched of using the opportunities created by the new media environment to create what we call research. That is a new media network for researchers, industry, and journalists. A network designed to increase data sharing within the research and innovation, and to make collaborations reliable and easy. I'm very glad to see that after 2 years of hard work, and with the support of its partners, the version of this platform will be accessible to all participants of this meeting and used throughout the conference. And I hope you will bring this substance to the meeting after me. Research is a concrete response to some of the key issues I mentioned. It is a European non-profit effort that brings together academia, media, and industry to better the transfer of technology and research in Europe. It wants to make transdisciplinary links easier. It wants to make access to research information easier. It wants to facilitate cooperation amongst researchers. And it wants to facilitate the relationship between researchers and media. We need a connected Europe whose brains, media, and companies use the opportunities of this new environment to sustain and enrich each other. In order to survive and grow in this highly competitive period, which is bound to last for a long time, we need to evolve from the Europe of states to the united networks of Europe. I look forward to these 2 days of debates here and hope that everyone takes this opportunity to see how the concept of responsible research, of innovation, can support this new phase of economic development that is so necessary for our growth and employment. And I want just at the end, very, very shortly, to express my own view on the organization of Europe. Because if you ask people in the street, in Dublin street, what are the purpose of Europe at this time? They don't know. If you ask by polls, are you pleased with the functioning of Europe? A majority say no. So why is this situation? Because Europe is clearly a necessity, clearly. But it's a necessity which is not perceived by the moment, by its citizens. One of the reasons, the only thing I will mention, is the permanent confusion between two different projects for Europe. You have Europe with the culture of the free trade area on one side, and you have Europe with the culture of integration Europe on the other side. And they are locked in a confused relationship in which it's impossible to know who is in charge, who is leading, who is explaining. For instance, we sign a treaty to limit the budget deficit to a certain amount. Some countries, including ours, are going beyond. And the Commission, which has no power in the Eurozone and will not contribute to the financing on eventual debt crisis in the Eurozone, changed the rules and said, well, you could do it a little later, a little less, all that. So we are starting again the 2003 and 2004 process, which led us to the present situation in Ireland, in France, and in Europe. We need to have a clear concept. The great trade area of 28 nations is one of the main purposes of the European organization. It has very few exclusive competence. Only two: international trade and the protection of competition, plus the fisheries. It's all. The rest is coordination between the member states. On the other hand, in this group of 28, you have a group of 17 who are members of the 28, who wants to integrate. They have the right to do it. They imagine, they believe that it will be more adapted to have a common integrated economic structure. So they must have a goal, an objective. And this objective, which is taking shape by now, is to have a common currency, a common budgetary equilibrium, not the details of a budget, of course, but equilibrium, and finally, the same taxes. And if you say so to people, if you say to them in less than 20 years, we will do this. You can work, produce, research in an area of more than 300 million people with the same money, the same budget, and the same taxes. The young people will see a real opportunity in Europe. And instead of having the temptation to take their chance and to put their talent on other directions, they will probably contribute to this new part of European development. So what we do here is for the whole Europe. It's for the 27, 28. But we must not ignore that there is a group of 17 who wants to go further, in fact, and to become, in the 21st century, a real world power that we are not at this moment. Thank you.